name's Louise. I work for Care Australia, based in Melbourne. The project that I'm going to talk about with our M&E system, I use that word a little loosely today, is a disaster preparedness project, not a humanitarian response. So it might be a little bit different to some of the other projects that people are talking about. But just as a little bit of background, the team that I work for at Care Australia looks after 6 specific countries where we don't have care offices. So we work only through partners who are based in those countries who aren't affiliated to Care at all. They're their own NGOs. So that adds some complexity with the M&E work that we do. So the project is a community disaster preparedness project that is running from April this year to April 2024. Actually, it might go longer. We're in discussions with VHA at the moment. And that's implemented in Kiribati, Samoa, Tonga, and Tuvalu. And there's 5 partners involved in this. So there's 1 in each country except 2 in Samoa. So again, there's some complexity with bringing all of that together. So the goal of the project is that communities in rural and urban areas of those 4 countries are more resilient to climate change and disasters through gender and disability inclusive approaches. It's roughly a $1.14 million project, so not huge, probably compared to some of the other grants that people have here. And it's targeting just shy of 40,000 people. So the implementing partners that we have in Kiribati and Tuvalu is Live and Learn Environmental Education. In Samoa, it's NOLA, which is a disabled persons organisation, WIBDI, also in Samoa, and then in Tonga, we have Māori Tonga Trust, and Crystal, give us a wave. Crystal's from Māori. She's one of our partner staff. Next slide. So just as a little bit of a background, I think nearly everyone here, I think except for Crystal and I, are from Asia, not the Pacific. So just wanted to give you a little bit of programming context. So the Pacific is one of the most disaster-prone regions in the world. So I think the 2 top disaster-prone countries in the world are Solomon Islands and Vanuatu. Communities are often quite small and dispersed. So unlike Asia, where you sort of get a mass group of people in most even kind of smaller villages, the population is just tiny in some of these places, and they're quite spread across large geographic areas. As with probably most places, there is a need to increase community capacity to better prepare for and respond to disaster events, and of course the ongoing effects of climate change. So the photo here is actually from Tonga. This was the volcanic eruption that happened, was it very tail end of last year or early this year, January I think, which also triggered a tsunami and a lot of ashfall, and so Care had a separate BHA grant that responded to this, which Crystal will talk about later in the week. So Care works on this project with a range of implementing partners, as I've said, and they sort of quite different sizes and different capacity levels, and have different levels of human resourcing, as well as IT capacity and just technology. So the M&E system, which I'll call it, for this project really just centres around an Excel spreadsheet that's managed by Care, and really that's just myself. So in this spreadsheet, we have 12 of the selected BHA indicators that were relevant to this program. And we've also added in 3 Care International indicators that were selected as being relevant. So Care has a sort of internal mandatory requirement that you pick at least 3 of their global indicators to add to all your projects. Next slide. So how it works, and you'll see it in a minute, so hopefully it makes more sense in person. So each partner, so I should start, there's a summary tab that I manage, which is, it's really an ITT. So there's an aggregate tab that brings all the partners together, and then each partner has their own tab with just their targets and their data. And so each partner gets a modified copy of the spreadsheet, which is just their the overview tab, which will be on the next slide, and their own individual tab. They don't see all the other partners' data, because they really don't need to know that. So they can either use the document, by document I mean the spreadsheet, as a reference point, or they can use it directly as their primary information management sort of system. So each month, care staff, which is the project coordinator and myself, have a 1-hour virtual meeting with each of the partners, and we discuss how project activities are going and progressing. So during this time, any figures that relate directly to those indicators will be entered into the relevant monthly column, which you'll see in a moment, for that partner into the master spreadsheet. So they can complete their offline version and email it to us, or they can just talk us through it verbally during the one-on-one conversations. And actually, the most recent thing we had was one of our partners in Samoa. They only had just the agricultural data to report on, so they just sort of zoomed in on those indicators on the spreadsheet and just sent us like a clip, like a copy-paste screenshot to us of the thing, and I just manually put that data into the spreadsheet. So as each partner reports each month, it automatically aggregates to provide the project-wide totals, and also has cumulative totals built into it, which I'll show you in a second. Okay, so don't worry about not reading the text, I know it's very tiny, but this is really just to give you a snapshot of what's on the indicator summary tab, which is the first one you can see the arrows pointing at. So I just wanted to make sure that all the partners had a common understanding of what the different indicators are that we picked from the BHA list. So the number, each BHA indicator, as you probably know, has a code. So that code is written in column B. In C is the wording of the actual indicator, and then we've got unit of measurement, any disaggregation that's required by BHA, and then very importantly is the donor calculation notes, and then the frequency of data capture. So just this is really just to make sure that everybody understands pretty clearly what are we measuring, how often, what kind of disaggregation, do we need a male-female split, do we need different types of events need to be captured differently, and also you can't see it because it's sort of hidden in that column F, but that's essentially a sort of summarized version of all the indicator guidance that's in that sort of larger M&E guidance book. I don't even know what it's called anymore. But essentially BHA provides sort of quite thorough definitions for all the indicators. So we tried to sort of simplify that as much as possible and put that into the column so that everybody gets what we mean when we say a certain word in the indicator. And for CARE's sake, we've just mapped in columns H to L the different partners and just yes or no whether they're collecting that indicator, because not all indicators are relevant to each partner's activities. So you can see in the agriculture section that everyone's got a no except for WIBD, because they're an agricultural-based organisation and the rest aren't. So that's just for us to sort of keep track of who's measuring what. Next slide. Again, please don't panic or try and understand this. This is my master sort of ITT. So this is reading off the coloured tabs, which you can't see, but just trust me that it is. So here we have, again, just the wording of all the indicators, but here we've built the aggregation into the spreadsheet. So if it needs male and female data, we've put different lines in and then it just auto totals. And you'll see that there's a column for each month. Some of them are hidden just because I couldn't fit it all on the one page, but it does run through the whole 2 years of the program. And yes, so most of the indicators, I think all but one, are just counting numerical values, so number of people trained, number of events that happened, except we do have a DO7, which is a percentage of people retaining knowledge indicator. So we've built in the calculation of that into the spreadsheet so that the partners don't have to calculate how many people, they just put the number of people that they trained, the number of people that got X amount on the test, and then the coloured sort of lines will total into the percentages. To make it easier for myself for donor reporting, in columns AC to AF in the sort of green section, that is just reading off the monthly columns in the right reporting period. So for the first annual report that runs up to September, that's just counting the data that goes in up to September, and so on. I've also put cumulative at the end, which is, sorry, it's all just, it looks like errors. It's just because there's no data in here for you to see yet, because we're still sort of in early days. But as the data goes in, that will cumulatively tell us how we're going against the target, which is in column E. Next slide. All right, so this looks almost exactly the same as the last one, but this is just a single partner tab. So this is Live and Learn Kiribati's tab. And you'll see, again, there's no data in here because they're still sort of doing a lot of the groundwork. So you'll notice, or you may not notice, but in column E, the data that's in here for the target is just for their organisation. It's not for everybody. So we can sort of keep tabs on how many people each partner is sort of aiming to reach for each indicator. So all they have to do is put their monthly data in, or we can do it for them, and things will start to total up. So it looks exactly the same as the main one, but it's just per partner. Next slide. Okay, so the benefits and challenges of using a fairly simple Excel spreadsheet as a sort of monitoring system. One of the benefits is that it's relatively simple to use. So all our partners are pretty familiar with Excel, and probably most people that all of us work with, have sort of used Microsoft Office suite. And they don't really need to even understand the formulas or how it's set up to be able to put the data in. And a lot of our staff in the partner organisations aren't necessarily M&E people, and some of our partners don't have M&E teams or even a single person that's dedicated to that. There might be a point person that's part of their role, but they're actually programming staff. So it's handy when you're working with people who don't really have a meal background. It doesn't require any additional software or even an internet connection, which is pretty important for us. I know in Kiribati and Tuvalu in particular, if they have heavy rains, they basically lose their internet connection straight after or the next morning. So we often have problems with them not being online. And it also ensures that the data is collected according to the different categories or disaggregations that the donor requires. It's built into it. Some of the challenges. It doesn't guarantee that the data that goes in is accurate. We have to just trust our partners that the data, if they said they trained 200 people, great, you've trained 200 people. It doesn't sort of do the quality check behind that, although we could have sort of an offline conversation around that. Another challenge is that it hasn't really been tested in real time. We have put some data in. I recently, probably in the last 2 weeks, put some of WIBD's information in, but it's still pretty early days in the project. A lot of people are just getting, curriculums ready and having meetings with government. So there's not a lot of actual indicator data that's ready to go in. So I'm hoping it works, but I'm not 100% sure. So setting up the spreadsheet with all the formulas and the auto totals did take a little bit of time, but I'm hoping that that will be won back again by the time it will save on the partner side. And the last point is something that was mentioned just recently. This approach or system may not be helpful in calculating total beneficiaries reached across all the activities with no double counting, but we'll see. So thank you.